That was the very interesting and provocative, in a good way, Concierto del Plata, from Rio de la Plata, by Argentine living composer Carlo Francetti. 3 movements, and the recording we just heard was made by Sergio Puccini on guitar, the San Francisco Camerata Americana, and the conductor was José Luis Moscovich. If you enjoy this program, please go to our website, wfmt.com/fiesta, and also don't forget to like us on Facebook. Fiesta is made possible by the generous support of WFMT members like you. Gracias to our producer, Daniel Goldberg, and por supuesto, muchas gracias para todos ustedes. Estamos en la cadena radial de WFMT.
This is Classical NEPM New England Public Media, WFCR HD2 Amherst, WNNZ FM Deerfield, WNNI Adams, WNNU Great Barrington, WAIC Springfield, and WAMH Amherst, in partnership with Amherst College and the University of Massachusetts Amherst, streaming at classicalnepm.org.
WHAM 89.3 Amherst, a service of Amherst College, now transitions to student programming. To continue to listen to classical music, please tune to the stations of the Classical NEPM Network or to the All Classical stream at classicalnepm.org. It's time for Soft Rock and Sports Talk. I'm your host, Holden Aureus. Welcome to a bite-sized episode of Southpaw Soundbites. It is a bite-sized episode because my thesis is due in 5 days, this coming Friday. That's April 19. And I considered taking the week off entirely, but I changed my mind when I remembered that I think I have 5 shows left, either 5 or 4. Well, it would have been 4 if I didn't do this one, and you know, you don't get to do college radio every day of the week or every week of the month when you're not in college. So might as well take what you can when you can get it. Anyway, we'll change the theme of this episode from what we started last week, which was the whole sophistopop, synth pop, 80s new wave type stuff. We'll get back to that next week when the thesis is in, and the real countdown to getting out of here starts. But for now, this episode will be themed around, let's say, deadlines. Deadlines or emptying the tank. You'll see what I mean when we get there. This first song is called Desperate Measures. It's by Marianas Trench. We'll give it a spin. This isn't quite soft rock. It's very 2000s neon pop punk. that sort of thing. I'll tell you a little story about how I first heard it when we come back. I've said it on the air before, but there's a lot of reruns happening these days, so nothing wrong with playing what we're familiar with. Desperate Measures, Mariana's Trench. Thanks for tuning in at 5 p.m. on this lovely Sunday.
Just a bit of minor surgery. These desperate times call for desperate measures. I'll give you something to cry about. Show some skin and would be cachet. How could you let this get to desperate measures now? For a first effort, this feels kinda last ditch. I guess this just got kinda drastic. Trust us, you just fell off the bus, baby. I can't let this go. I can't let this go. For this for so long, kiss me just once. Like these are desperate measures now. I can't let this have a piece of American dream. Open up and swallow on your knees and say thank you. I'd like some desperate measures, please. For a first effort, this feels kinda last ditch. I guess this just got kinda drastic. Trust us, you just fell off the bus, suckers. Yeah, well, payback is a motherfucker. I can't let this go. Pushing for this for so long. Kiss me just once. Like these are desperate measures now. I can't let this go forever. For worse or better, my poor heart will only surrender. Go forever. For worse or better, my poor heart will only surrender now. You right where I want you. I've been pushing for this for so long. Kiss me just once. Like these are desperate measures now. I can't let this go when I got you right where I want you. I've been pushing for this for so long. Kiss me just once. Like these are desperate measures now. I can't let this go.
All right, Desperate Measures by Mariana's Trench, kicking off the special bite-sized episode of Southpaw Soundbites. We've got just an hour of music and talk for you, but we'll make it as quality as it usually is. To foray into the sports scene, or at least get a general idea of what we'll be talking about this week, it's been an eventful time for the National League Central, believe it or not. They've been the punching bag of the National League for the past couple of years because of all of the star power concentrated in the Western and Eastern divisions, but a couple of teams in the NL Central and then in their counterparts, the AL Central, are off to a pretty good start. So that will be one thing under discussion. But whereas we're in the midst of, or we're at the start of what's going to be 6 months of baseball, as per usual, we are coming up on the end of a couple of major sports. That the first thing is the NBA regular season, which, believe it or not, is actually very interesting for a regular season. It's the final day, game 82 of the 2023 to 24 season for the NBA, and it's actually worth tuning into. There are actually regular season NBA games worth tuning into, which is a weird thing to say considering how many teams make the playoffs and as a result how inconsequential so much of the season seems to be. But that is not the case right now. As a matter of fact, in the Western Conference, there are 3 teams all vying for the number 1 seed. They're all tied. They're all tied going into the final day of play, which I hesitate to say whether this has happened before or not, but I think it's pretty unlikely. I need to find sourcing on it, but as of right now, it's the Thunder, the Timberwolves, and the Nuggets, all at 56 and 25 going into the final game. And so there are tiebreaker scenarios and spreadsheets and tables all up on the internet to look up, but that'll be interesting for them. On the other end of things, on the bottom part of the bracket, the Lakers, Kings, and Warriors. So we've got 3 of the California teams all the way at the bottom looking at a play-in, or at least trying to figure out where in the play-in they're going to be. The Lakers are currently just a game ahead of the Kings and the Warriors for the number 8 seed, which means that their path to actually making it into the playoffs would be a little bit easier, given that the play-in tournament is this mix of single and double elimination. And then for the Kings and Warriors, who are at the bottom of the pack, they're hoping for a couple of things to break their direction, so they have an easier path to actually making it into the postseason. On the Eastern Conference, things are considerably more locked up. The Boston Celtics clinched the best record in the NBA a while back. I'm going to assume at least a week and a half, if not 2 weeks ago. They're 14 games clear of the New York Knicks, who are the second best in the East. So things are a little smoother on the East Coast side of things, but if you are able to tune into the West Coast, to the Western Conference, would highly advise you do so. So that's basketball. We'll talk about another sport that's finishing up today. In fact, the Masters, a tradition unlike any other, as I don't know if Jim Nance is actually the one who says that. I know it always popped up during the broadcasts on CBS, but I don't know who actually says the voiceover. Maybe that's something I'll look up. But the leaders in the Masters, it's the final round. It's Masters Sunday. They have just entered Amen Corner on the back 9. So stay tuned. I guess we'll see Amen Corner unfold over the course of this hour. So that'll be fun to talk about. We will talk about Scotty Scheffler, who's currently in the lead, 2 shots clear of the field. And at the other end of things, we'll probably talk about Tiger Woods, who made history by making his 24th straight cut at the Masters. That's the all-time record. Just past, I believe, Fred Couples for that. And yeah, Fred Couples and Gary Player. But we'll talk more about golf after a couple more songs. Our next song up here, this is an instrumental song. It's called Art of Motion. It's by Andy McKee. He's this guitarist, and it's from the album of the same name, released in 2006. I picked this one because when you're writing, when you have a deadline to meet, not that I'm speaking concretely, I'm only speaking hypothetically here. When you're writing and have a deadline to meet, it's sometimes easier to have instrumental music as opposed to songs with lyrics. And this one is a pretty good study song as far as it goes. It is solely acoustic guitar, and it's still interesting to listen to. Very driving. I like the I don't have the technical terms for guitar play since I don't know how to play the guitar, but I think there's a lot of tapping on the fingerboard and a lot of percussion that Andy McKee does with the guitar itself that makes it a little more interesting than just the 6 strings. So this is Art of Motion, Andy McKee, some instrumental music if you need to get some work done. Thanks for tuning in to Bite-Sized Soundbites. Art of Motion, Andy McKee, that's just acoustic guitar from his album, The Art of Motion, which was released in '06. I think I've played a couple of other songs from that album on this show before. Drifting is probably the most famous of those. That's the one that made him go viral on early YouTube, because again, the album was released in 2006, so it was one of the videos that are remnants of a simpler time, where it was just a zoomed-in video of him playing the guitar, just his hands. I don't even think you could see his face, but old YouTube found that incredibly compelling. So Drifting, one of the more popular ones, and then the closing song, Rylan, also one of the more acclaimed ones from when he was making the rounds on YouTube back then. I'm trying to recall when exactly I played those songs of his. Aha, there it is. I suspected this would be the case, and it's true. That closing song, Rylan, I may have played it a couple of times in the last year or two, but I know for sure that the first time I played that song by Andy McKee was on my first ever show at Wham, my first ever episode of Southpaw Soundbites. Back then, my shows were all only an hour, no 2-hour options. That would come during sophomore year. And it was, God, was it 4 to 5 or 5 to 6? It might have been 5 to 6, just like it is now. But for that first episode, and I've looked at the clip a couple of times because I had the foresight to record the shows from the first episode. I'm really happy I did because, it's cool to see how far you've come, which is a polite way of saying that first episode was pretty bad. But that's the case when you start off behind a microphone and it's fall 2020 and, you're not used to talking because you spent 5 months sequestered in shelter in place. But the first episode, I decided, wow, this could not get away with this today. My first episode, I just played basically straight through Can't Buy a Thrill, Steely Dan's first album, released in 1972, blah, blah, blah. We've discussed it ad nauseum on this show. But I played that album pretty close to all the way through. Maybe I left out Brooklyn or something, or whatever song I thought was the worst one on the album. Even though the worst song on that album is still probably a solid 6 out of 10, which is not something you can say for any artist's discography, but I digress. Anyway, the bulk of that first show was just Can't Buy a Thrill by Steely Dan, and if it was October 4th, so the playoffs had just started, maybe the Dodgers were facing off against the Brewers in the expanded wild card round or something like that, and so it was just Can't Buy a Thrill, Dodgers, Can't Buy a Thrill, more Dodgers, and finally I ended it off with this acoustic guitar by Andy McKee. So maybe that was the origin of all of the tonal whiplash I proceeded to inflict on the airwaves over the next 4 years. But it's good to revisit Art of Motion by Andy McKee. Okay, we played something that you might listen to while you're working. Now we're going to have a song where, like the first one we played, Desperate Measures, it has lyrical content that sums up how I feel while I'm working, as of recently. This is also some acoustic guitar stuff, but with lyrics this time. It's a song by the Mountain Goats from their album The Sunset Tree, released in 2005. So we're getting very specific here. If I had a nickel for every acoustic guitar song I've played on this episode, released in the mid-2000s, 2 nickels. Not a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. There's a butchering of a Dr. Doofenshmirtz quote for you. Anyway, the song is This Year by the Mountain Goats. The refrain from which the song gets its title goes along the lines of, I'm going to make it through this year if it kills me. There's the wry humor of the Mountain Goats, what they were most often characterized for. A small part of my music sphere on, that goes through my earbuds, but still one that I do recognize and like to listen to. This Year by the Mountain Goats on Southpaw Soundbites.
I broke free on a Saturday morning.
young. Hurt my knuckles punching the machines. The taste of Scotch rich on my tongue. And then Kathy showed up and we hung out, trading swigs from the bottle, all bitter and clean, locking eyes, holding hands, twin high maintenance machines. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. I drove home in the California dusk. I could feel the alcohol inside of me hum, pictured the look on my stepfather's face, ready for the bad things to come. I downshifted as I pulled into the driveway, the motor screaming out, stuck in second gear. The scene ends badly, as you might imagine, in a cavalcade of anger and fear. There will be feasting and dancing in Jerusalem next year. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me. I am gonna make it through this year if it kills me.
This year, the Mountain Goats. That's their album, The Sunset Tree, live on Bite-Sized Soundbites. Okay, so back to that game of 18 holes. We're talking about the Masters. I was indeed correct. The catchphrase, the Masters, a tradition unlike any other, was in fact uttered by Jim Nantz, which is its own tradition, perhaps something I recall even more than the specifics of each Masters that I've watched. And we're going to anecdotes. This is what this show is comprised of more often than not. I had the pleasure of meeting Jim Nantz, 5 years ago now? I think 5 years ago. It was at the U.S. Open. It was hosted in Pebble Beach that year, which was around, nearabouts where I went to high school. And it was really cool because my dad and I volunteered at the U.S. Open, working the concession stands or something like that. And the great deal about that was you got to volunteer in the morning, and then, you were already inside the golf course, so you would get, by virtue of that, you'd have a ticket for the entire afternoon. And so you could work your shift and then just go around the golf course and see what's up. And so that was great. I was all over the golf course for, I think that must have been that entire weekend. And so everywhere from the putting greens where, you could really you could get so close as to take selfies with the people on the putting green, or depending on how much you knew your way around the course and which groups were where at which times, you could get very close to the players while they were out there. And so I'll always remember, I think during the first half, during the first couple of runs, I think it was before the weekend, I made it to the turn between the fifth green and the sixth tee, or maybe 6 and 7 or something. But the point was I got all the way up. I moved there quickly enough where that there was no one else pressing against the ropes. I was able to make it all the way to the barrier, and so I was right there on the side of the path, just in time for one of the groups to come through. Which, God, I can't remember the third person in the threesome, but I remember one of them was Justin Thomas, who at that point was very highly ranked in the world, and of course, Tiger Woods. And so that was, surreal is an overused turn of phrase, but it was very cool. It's literally Tiger Woods. And so I saw him. He wasn't wearing his Sunday red, of course, because I think it was a Friday. But you walked right by, and he's completely in the zone when he's on the course, as one would be. But so cool to see that. And so later on in that afternoon, I think I wasn't watching the golf. I was over at like the fan area where they had their merch tents and all that sort of stuff, because there were a couple of meet and greets, and one of those meet and greets was with Jim Nantz. And so for those of you who don't watch golf, or do but have forgotten Jim Nantz for reasons, he's a sports commentator, and he's been all over all sorts of telecasts, but one of his most famous sports that he covers, he calls golf a lot. And so back in 2019, that would have been right after Tiger Woods won the Masters that year in April of that year. And so the U.S. Open was in late June, mid to late June. And so that was very much on my mind when I was waiting in the line at the merch store to talk to Jim Nantz. And so got to the front of the line and, shook his hand, blah, blah, blah. I talked to him about, his call of Tiger's final putt to win the 2019 Masters, a return to glory, and the crowd goes crazy. I talked to him about that, and I also talked to him about it was either the 08 or the 09 PGA. I forget which one, the PGA Championship. And I think I forgot which year it was while I was talking to him, and he had to correct me. But I was talking to him about that because, while we were on the subject of Tiger, which, now that I think about it, is probably what, 70% of the people in line to meet him decided to talk about when they got up there. So apologies to Jim Nantz that I didn't have original questions for him. But I was talking to him about that PGA, the upset at Hazeltine, because it was the only time where Tiger had a lead or a share of the lead going into the final day of a major and lost. It's one of 3 times I've cried watching sports. That might have been the first time, actually. I think because it was before the Super Bowl, Colts versus Saints, but I digress. Anyway, I got to talk to Jim Nantz about all those sorts of things, and I took a picture with him, and, 5 years later, and the Masters are still going on, and they're still a tradition unlike any other. We can look at the leaderboard right now, and let's see. Taking a look at the leaderboard, it's still Scotty Scheffler at the top of things. He is on, come on, show me a leaderboard here, masters.com. You can do it. Yeah, he is now 3 shots clear of the field after, a double bogey by Homa on the par 3 12th. Again, this is why it's Amen Corner. I'm assuming he probably got hit in the water, hit it in the creek, although I'll have to look up footage from that. But Scheffler has been cruising the entire day, and now that he's opened it up to 3 shots over the rest of the field, it's looking very, very within reach for him. And let's see. Yeah, Colin Morikawa, who's in the final group, he flagged in late on in the front 9, so he was started at 6 under, now he's at 3 under. So everyone's falling away, but not Scotty Scheffler. He is on track to win his second green jacket. He won a couple years ago in 2022. So a great career for him. Looks like it's poised to continue to grow, but still plenty of golf left. He's not through Amen Corner yet, so still time to see what happens. But that's the Masters. I didn't watch too much of it this year, although I wish I did, as having the Masters the week before the thesis is due means that I'm not very much into consuming media of any sort right now. So all I can do is look at the leaderboard and watch the highlights and so on and so forth. So it's Scheffler at the top, three shots clear of the field, and then all the way at the bottom is Tiger Woods, who had a 5 over round today, and then yesterday a 10 over round. He's been battling through injuries, I mean, of course, for like the past decade and a half, but especially this week, he was very much grinding through the course, and so he was able to make the cut at a respectable 1 over par heading into the weekend, but then things very much unraveled for him over Saturday and Sunday. So at least he made the cut, at least he didn't withdraw. These are things that the general public can perhaps be happy about. And speaking of things to be happy about, there's probably no younger person more happy about the Masters pairings than one Neil Shipley. And so Neil Shipley, he's an amateur, he's a senior on the Ohio State golf team, and he is also the low amateur, the only one to make the cut for this year's Masters, so he garnering, I don't know if it's official yet. He's already locked up low amateur honors for this year of the Masters, and so the way things shook out, he got to play over the weekend with Tiger Woods. Imagine that you're playing golf at Ohio State, you make it to the Masters, you become the low amateur at the Masters, and then you're walking Augusta National with Tiger Woods wearing Sunday red. That's dream. It must be a dream come true for Neil Shipley. There's a headline that just got posted a couple hours ago about, they interviewed Neil Shipley, and so when quoted about when asked about his time playing with Tiger this weekend, his soundbite is, quote, "I'd have to win one of these to top this." So, a very fun weekend for one Neil Shipley, but perhaps less so for Tiger, with finishing with a 16 over 304, which is his career worst at the Masters. So, ups and downs. You have Neil Shipley having a great time, let the kids play. We have Tiger, who set a record for cuts made, but unraveled over the weekend. And then we have Scottie Scheffler, who is 7 holes away from a pretty good Sunday afternoon. Okay, back to the music. We will go to a Philadelphia duo, Daryl Hall, John Oates. The album is Ecstatic, and the song is called Time's Up, although the exact lyrical content of the song it's definitely not about meeting a deadline. Well, depending how liberal you can get with the lyrics or with interpreting the lyrics, maybe it is meeting a deadline of some sort, but it's not an academic deadline by any means. Time's Up, Daryl Hall, John Oates, coming to you from Southpaw Soundbites this Masters Sunday.
Sat in the room and the clock kept ticking on. I had nothing to say with a smile. Nothing to say. And it's once, twice, let me think of myself. All I ever do is think of you. Step back and let me breathe for a while. Let me think. Go. Time's up, locked on the shelf, and the time reminds me things ain't going right. I know the time's up. So I wanna go home, 'cause I'd rather be alone tonight. Time's up for us, and I tell myself that things ain't going right. No, I better believe it now. Yeah, I wanna go home, 'cause I'd rather be alone tonight. The looking goes on, stay strong, because I'm tied to you mentally. But on the bad nights, the moods are mixed by a mile. The moods are mixed, so it's left, right. I gotta walk on in and out of your life, yeah. Step back and let me breathe for a while.
Time's Up, Daryl Hall, John Oates from Ecstatic. It was released on the expanded edition of the album as the 11th and 12th tracks for the remaster. So when the album first came out, it ended with Intraveno, but then the 2 tracks that were released on the expanded edition were Time's Up and No Brain, No Pain, which perhaps would also be an acceptable song to include on today's Deadlines playlist. But again, we move. Speaking of songs on expanded editions of albums, one of the songs I've been listening to a lot lately is a song that was also released on a deluxe edition. Specifically, this song is Guts by Olivia Rodrigo. The album is Guts, the expanded edition. And so when Guts Deluxe released, or it was stylized by her, Guts parentheses Spilled, it included 4 additional tracks that weren't on the release from last year. And so one of those tracks, big fan of. Actually, there are 3 tracks in there I'm a big fan of, but this one particularly caught my ear. There we go. I've always been a big fan of her up-tempo stuff as opposed to her down-tempo stuff, and one of the new tracks scratched that itch exactly. And so the song is Obsessed. It is by Olivia Rodrigo. It is from the deluxe version of Guts.
If I told you how much I think about her, you'd think I was in love. And if you knew how much I looked at her pictures, you would think we're best friends. 'Cause I know her star sign, I know her blood type. I've seen every movie she's been in, oh God, she's beautiful. I know you loved her, and I know I'm butthurt, but I can't help it. I'm so obsessed with your ex. I know she's been asleep on my side of your bed, and I can feel it. I'm staring at her like I wanna get her. And I remember every detail you ever told me, so be careful, baby. I'm so obsessed with your ex. Yeah, I'm so obsessed with your ex. She's got those lips, she's got those hips, the life of every party. She's talented, she's good with kids, she even speaks kindly about me. And I know you love me, and I know it's crazy, but every time you call my name, I think you mistake me for her. You both have moved on, you don't even talk, but I can't help it, I got issues, I can't help it, baby. I'm so obsessed with your ex. I know she's been asleep on my side in your bed, and I can feel it. I'm staring at her like I wanna get her. And I remember every detail you have ever told me, so be careful, baby. I'm so obsessed with your ex. I'm so obsessed with your ex. Is she friends with your friends? Is she good in bed? Do you think about her? No, I'm fine, it doesn't matter, tell me. Is she easygoing, never controlling, well-traveled, well-read? How could she make me so upset? I'm so obsessed with your ex. She's been asleep on my side in your bed. I'm so obsessed with your ex. She makes me so upset. I'm so obsessed with your ex.
Obsessed, Olivia Rodrigo, like the song before it, which was Time's Up by Hall & Oates, both songs that were released on expanded or deluxe versions of the original LPs. Okay, we're at the turn. We're not at the turn. We're at the... People always say top and bottom of the hour, but it's never the side of the hour. But we're coming up to that. It's 17 minutes until 6 p.m., and this show ends, and I hand it back off to NEPM because Sound Salvation is taking the April break off. So they'll be back along with me next Sunday at 6 p.m. So let's see. We've got time for a few more songs. I always forget how quickly an hour of a show goes by as opposed to 2 hours. You can really concentrate all of the hits in there, but also there's just so much that you always want to fit into a show that ends up getting cut for time. Actually, speaking of cut for time, that's the phrase commonly used for SNL sketches when they're not able to make it on air because, believe it or not, they were cut for time. And so one of the sketches that got cut just last night was perhaps one of the more anticipated ones of the episode. So for context, last night Ryan Gosling hosted SNL. It was his third time doing so not quite at the Five Timers Club, unlike his La La Land co-star Emma Stone, who just reached the Five Timers Club last year, but he's on his way, and even in his 3 times hosting the show, he's still produced several sketches that will go down as some of the best in SNL history. And so one of those that received particular acclaim was the sketch Papyrus. And so without going into too much detail, if you haven't seen the skit, it's about the font choices behind certain movie posters. And so when that came out back in 2017, it was wildly acclaimed, spread like wildfire on the internet, and so people were hotly anticipating Gosling's return to SNL for several reasons, but one of them being, would there be a follow-up to Papyrus? Would there be a Papyrus 2? And so there was indeed Papyrus 2. It dropped on YouTube, but it did not premiere during the show because it was, as said, cut for time. And so in that digression about Ryan Gosling and SNL, we've almost surely ensured... Is that redundant? We've almost ensured that some of the remaining songs on our set list will be cut for time, but that's quite all right. There will be more radio next week. We're going to go to a song by the rock group Maxis. I had the story about how I found this group a while back when I first aired these guys in like 2021, because the discovery of them must have been more recent. But now I don't actually know how they first popped into my suggested or whatever, or maybe it was on YouTube or something like that. But they are a rock group in the 80s. They released one album in 1981, and for some reason it scratches that itch. I don't know what it is about it. I don't think there's anything particularly distinct about the album. It's a self-titled album by a generic 80s rock group that put out one 9-track, 35-minute album and said, okay, we are done now. But it is good, and it has stuck around in my shuffles, and now it's back on the show because the song title is Don't Try to Stop Me Now. 5 days to go. We're going to make it happen. Don't try to stop me now. Southpaw Soundbites.
Just another
Don't Try to Stop Me. Don't Try to Stop Me Now. Ooh, we almost got through that title without any mess ups, but that's okay. Don't Try to Stop Me Now. That was by Maxis, 1X, from the album of the same name, and in fact, their only album, released in 1981. So that was it for those guys. Okay, we have 7 minutes left, which means it's either time to cram 2 songs in, or it's time to filibuster and then play 1 song. And I think it's going to be the latter because of how easy it is to filibuster on air sometimes. Okay, so it is still the beginning of the MLB season, and as always, a billion different narratives to latch onto at the start. But for this one, we will focus on the Central because it is always so easy to overlook the NL Central and the AL Central because star power on the coasts, the whole debate over flyover states and stuff of the like, and more importantly for baseball, the fact that the Central teams are generally very bad at baseball. They're almost always, as at least in recent memory, the lowest seeded of the division winners that make it into the playoffs. Oftentimes there are teams from the East or West that have better records than the Central Division winner, but are unable to make it into the playoffs because of the playoff format. So sometimes a lot of ire directed at the Central divisions. But so far in the season, they do seem to be earning their keep. The 2 biggest surprises right now, we'll pick one team from the AL Central and one team from the NL Central, are the Kansas City Royals and the Pittsburgh Pirates. They have both been the worst teams in their divisions for a number of years running. Although the Pirates weren't officially the basement team last year, they were fourth, ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals, who had an uncharacteristically terrible season last year. But the point stands that the Royals and Pirates have not been so great. But for the Royals, they had a pretty nice offseason in terms of spending. They were able to actually sign a handful of free agents, which is always good. It's always good to see teams spending money. Let's see, who did they sign most recently? They signed Will Smith, Chris Stratton, Seth Lugo. So like a ton of bullpen arms and fringe starters, but Adam Frazier, Austin Nola, Hunter Renfroe, they were able to just get a lot of people with low risk and therefore low cost, but also high upside. So either it meant the team could make a run at things, or they could sell those guys at the deadline if they were underperforming. But right now they're doing pretty nicely. They're 10-6, just a half game out of first. So a good start to the season for them. And then as for the Pittsburgh Pirates, who have A, been terrible, and B, have been general managed by an Amherst alum for the past decade or so. First Neil Huntington, and then now Ben Sherrington since 2018, give or take. The Pirates have been bad. There's no sugarcoating that. But they could hopefully be turning the corner. They did have a really good April last year and then crashed and burned, but they're also having a good April this year, and so it's always good to see them starting strong. Whether or not that continues, who knows? But they have exciting young arms coming up. They have veterans putting in work. Andrew McCutchen actually just hit his 300th home run of his career today, so a good milestone for the Pittsburgh legend. But there's a lot to be excited about. It's a young team, good arms. Brian Hayes and O'Neal Cruz make up a very good left side of the infield, and so we'll see. Maybe they can sustain things. They just knocked off their in-state rivals, the Philadelphia Phillies, to move to 11-5 on the season. So things are looking up for some teams in the Central. Always many more storylines that we didn't get to, but we can always try for next week. Our final song, it's by Boz Scaggs. It's from the album Down to Then Left, released in 1977. It is entitled Hard Times, because that is where we are at right now. But don't worry, next time I'm on air, that's a week from now, at 4 p.m., next time I'm on air hosting Southpaw Soundbites, the hard times will be over, and my thesis will be turned in. So until then, I'm Holden Aureus. I'll see you next week for Soft Rock and Sports Talk. Boz Skaggs, play us out. Wham 89.3 Amherst, a service of Amherst College, now transitions to classical NEPM. Student programming will return tomorrow or Tuesday.